Imagine, just for a second, being able to take something like urban waste, something we usually just want to get rid of, and turn it into a resource.
Hmm.
A resource that actually makes your city, your environment better. That's kind of the territory we're exploring today.
Yeah, that's a great way to frame it.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to unpack quite a significant player on the world stage, an international financial institution that, well, many might have heard of but maybe don't know in depth.
Right.
The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the EBRD.
That's the one. And our mission, really, for this deep dive is to get a handle on who the EBRD is, what drives them, what are their core principles.
Beyond just the finance.
Exactly. And then, to make it tangible, we want to bring it right down to the ground level. We'll focus on a very specific project they're funding, Project Guelmim in Morocco.
Okay.
So we can see how those big bank principles actually translate into, real world stuff. Sustainable infrastructure, in this case.
So by the end of our chat, you listening should have a much clearer picture of this pretty powerful force in global development. And you'll see how these innovative ideas for essential services, like managing water, are actually being put into practice, connecting the big money with local needs.
That's the goal.
Okay, so let's start with that foundation then, the EBRD. I mean, the numbers are staggering when you look at them.
They really are.
We're talking over, what, 210 billion investment?
Yeah, over 210 billion euros across more than 7,500 projects. It's a huge amount of activity over decades.
But it's not just the money, as you said. It's underpinned by specific values, right? That seems key.
It absolutely is. And this is what I think makes the EBRD particularly interesting. It's not just about return on investment in the narrow sense. Their core values, things like supporting multi-party democracy, pluralism, transparency, and a really strong focus on environmental sustainability. These aren't just, words in a brochure.
Right, not just window dressing.
No. They actually shape the bank's choices. They influence which projects get funded, who they partner with. It forces them to think about governance, about societal impact alongside the infrastructure.
And you mentioned a key concept there, additionality. What does that mean in practice?
Yeah, additionality is crucial. It essentially means the EBRD aims to step in where the market won't or can't on its own. They're not just providing funding that could easily come from a commercial bank. They're trying to fill critical gaps, providing finance or expertise or risk mitigation that wouldn't otherwise be there, making something happen that wouldn't happen without them.
That makes sense. It's a comprehensive way of looking at development. But I mean, applying those values consistently across so many projects, different countries, sometimes tricky political environments, how do they actually manage that? How do they ensure it happens?
Well, that's where the institutional plumbing comes in, so to speak. They've built in accountability mechanisms. There are rigorous project evaluations, a pretty comprehensive sanction system if things go wrong, a dedicated compliance office, the office of the chief compliance officer.
Right.
Plus, thorough checks on clients, due diligence, and strict risk management. It's not about just spraying money around.
It sounds very structured.
It is. It has to be. It's about strategic, principled engagement designed for the long haul. And this structure allows them to invest not just capital, but also in things like policy reform, helping businesses improve. They work across a ton of sectors: energy, finance, manufacturing, telecom.
A very wide range.
A very wide range. But for today, the really relevant one, for our example, is municipal infrastructure.
Okay, so let's make that jump then. From the big principles and the structure down to the ground. Tell us about Project Guelmim in Morocco. How does it exemplify these ideas?
Right, Guelmim. So this project is located in the Guelmim region of Morocco. The EBRD is putting in a significant chunk of the funding. It's a sub-sovereign loan, meaning it's to a regional entity, not the national government directly.
How much are we talking?
Up to 130 million Moroccan dirhams, which is roughly 12 million euros.
Okay, not insignificant.
Not at all, and it covers nearly half the total project cost. So that shows a real commitment from the EBRD to this specific local initiative.
So what's the core problem they're trying to solve in Guelmim with this project? What does it actually do?
It's basically tackling two really critical resource issues for the region.
Okay.
First, it's about improving the drinking water supply, specifically getting reliable water to households in the more rural parts of the region. A fundamental need, obviously.
Absolutely. And the second part?
The second part involves upgrading 4 existing wastewater treatment plants. WWTPs.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets quite innovative.
How so?
Because the upgrade isn't just about treating the wastewater better. It's specifically designed to allow the reuse of that treated water.
Reuse for what?
For watering green spaces, parks, public gardens, that sort of thing within the region.
Ah, that's clever. Closing the loop, in a way.
Exactly. Instead of just discharging the treated water, they're turning it into a resource for the community. The total project cost is around 270 million dirhams, by the way, with other funding coming from the Global Environmental Fund and local sources too.
That really is a neat combination, public health through better drinking water and environmental innovation through water reuse. What does the actual work look like? I mean, pipes and what else?
Yeah, it's quite hands-on. For the drinking water side, it involves drilling new wells. They call it exploitation drilling, basically tapping into water sources that weren't accessible before.
Okay.
Then laying lots of pipes, obviously, the network itself, and installing the electrical systems needed to pump and manage the water.
Right, the infrastructure to support it.
Precisely. And for the wastewater part, it's about putting in advanced treatment processes at those existing plants, but also supplying and installing completely new watering networks designed to use that treated effluent for the city's green areas.
So it's quite tangible work. You can actually see the infrastructure being built or upgraded.
Very much so. It's taking something usually seen as waste and quite literally giving it a new purpose, making the region greener.
It really does sound like a prime example of sustainable engineering. And you can see how this Guelmim project fits squarely into EBRD's focus areas, can't you? Especially their green goals and their work in infrastructure.
Absolutely. It ticks those boxes clearly. It's not just about basic water provision. It's about smart, sustainable water management. That reuse element is key.
Yeah.
And that, again, circles back to that idea of additionality we talked about.
How so?
Well, this kind of innovative reuse of treated wastewater for greening public spaces, that's maybe not the standard approach everywhere yet.
Right. It might be seen as too complex or costly without specific backing.
Exactly. It's the kind of forward-thinking, environmentally beneficial solution that might not get off the ground without an institution like the EBRD stepping in, pushing that envelope on sustainability.
So let's recap where we've journeyed. We started with the sheer scale of the EBRD, that huge investment, thousands of projects.
Over 210 billion, 7,500 plus projects.
Driven by these foundational values we discussed: democracy, transparency, environmental focus.
Right, values that aren't just on paper.
And we followed that all the way down to the specifics, the nuts and bolts of one single project, Guelmim in Morocco.
Yeah, and what I find really striking is seeing how those big overarching goals, fostering democracy, integrity, pluralism, genuinely seem to underpin the practical investment decisions.
It connects.
It connects. Project Guelmim isn't just about the pipes and the treatment plants, important as they are. It's a real-world demonstration of their commitment to improving lives, promoting green solutions.
Especially that innovative water reuse.
Exactly. That reuse aspect is such a clear example. It shows how a bank can foster local accountability and green policy through its financing, lining up perfectly with their focus on environmental and social sustainability and, again, that crucial additionality.
So hopefully you listening now have this perhaps unique perspective. You can see how massive international finance connects with very specific local needs and how innovative solutions, particularly in something like municipal infrastructure, can emerge from that connection guided by those core institutional values.
Yeah, seeing how the big picture translates to the small picture and vice versa.
Which leads to a final thought, perhaps.
Okay.
Considering everything we've discussed about Project Guelmim, the focus on rural drinking water, that smart reuse of wastewater, what broader lessons might we take away from this specific blend, this mix of international finance, local needs, and sustainable solutions? What does it tell us about how we might tackle global resource challenges? Water scarcity, for example, in ways that genuinely change lives on the ground.